All right, thanks so much for joining us today for our webinar, Get Out the Vote 2022, What You Need to Know. My name is Holly Watkins. I am the Communications and Public Policy Manager here at the ARC of North Carolina. So let's jump right in. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about the information that pertains to voting in North Carolina. We're going to talk about access to voting for a person with IDD, that's an intellectual and developmental disability. We're going to talk about voting rights and advocacy, and then I'm going to take a little time to explain the voting process and rights to guardians. And it's important to note that all of the information that's going to be covered in this presentation is based on voting laws and information for North Carolina. So political elections are an important part of our lives. The people that are elected to political office get to make decisions, and those decisions can affect your life. Sometimes it can be really easy to say, I'm just one person. What does my vote really matter? And as we saw in the 2020 elections, many races were decided by only hundreds of votes. And your one vote can help make the decision on whether or not someone is elected. Your vote really does matter. If you haven't registered to vote, you want to make sure that you register to vote today. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that here shortly. So if you have never registered to vote, here are some of the deadlines you're going to want to be aware of. If you want to vote in the November 8th election, the last day that you can register online, by mail, or at your local Board of Election office is Friday, October 14th. Also important to know, if you have moved since the 2020 elections, you need to update your voter registration. So I myself moved last year and I had to fill out a new form to update my address. This must be done so that your official address is available when you want to vote. So after October 14th, you will only be able to register using same-day registration during the early voting. And we'll talk a little bit about early voting here in the presentation. If you are registered to vote, you can get a sample ballot online. You can go to the website that you see listed there, fill out the requested information, and this will bring up your voter information and the ballot, a sample ballot for your voting precinct. So this is the sample ballot for my precinct. And this is really cool because it gives you an opportunity to know what the ballot looks like and who's running for office. There are laws and rules in place to make sure that voting is accessible to people with disabilities. There must be poll workers available to assist you if you choose to vote in person. Make sure you ask one of the people at the polling site who would be available to assist if you need help. Now, this is only for and more about physical assistance. It's not about somebody coming into the voting booth and helping you vote. So keep that in mind. So the different ways that you can vote. With COVID-19 still going on, it's affecting many people, and you may not feel comfortable going to vote in person, which is understandable. There are several different ways for you to vote in the upcoming election. You can vote by mail-in ballot. You can vote from a facility, and a facility is a hospital, a nursing home, or a group home, or you can vote in person at a polling site. If you vote by mail, you're going to need to obtain an absentee ballot. This is a form that you will fill out to cast your vote. You can call your local county Board of Elections to request the form, or you can contact the North Carolina Board of Elections to receive the form. If you go to vote in person, there are a couple of different ways that you can vote. You may choose to use curbside voting. Now, if you use curbside voting, this means that you won't have to leave the car. Someone will bring your ballot to you. You can also go inside the polling site to vote. When you go in the polling site, you're going to need to go to the main desk to check in and receive your ballot. Once you have your ballot, you can go to a private voting booth and fill out your ballot. And once you've done that, you'll take it to a machine and insert your ballot so that it will be counted. Let's talk a little bit about early voting. Early voting is going to begin on October 20th and end on November 5th. This means that you can go to a polling site in person to vote before Election Day, which is November 8th. You know, you may not be available, you may have to work, you may have appointments or other things going on November 8th that would keep you from going on that day. So this is nice to be able to go and vote when you have the time to do it. Again, you need to get early voting is available October 20th and it ends on November 5th. There are going to be early voting sites set up across North Carolina, and you'll need to contact your local Board of Elections in order to find those early voting sites. So if you are a person with an intellectual or developmental disability living in North Carolina, you have the right to vote privately and independently. That means you do not have to have someone with you while you vote. And no one can tell you who you should or should not vote for in an election. Each polling place should be accessible and have voting booths that are accessible. That means that someone who uses a wheelchair should be able to enter the building where voting is taking place, and there is a voting booth available for them to use. You do have the right to have someone with you when you vote. And you can also bring a service animal with you. If you feel like your rights are being violated, you can always contact the North Carolina State Board of Elections, or you can contact Disability Rights North Carolina. So let's talk a little bit more about the voting process and rights. You do have the rights that you keep when you have a guardian, if you need a guardian. Here are a few of those rights. You do have the right to vote, you have the right to marry, you have the right to make a will, and you have the right to enter into a valid contract. Only a judge can decide if a person cannot vote, and that's usually because that person has committed a crime, not because of a disability. A poll worker, a service provider, or a family member cannot tell you that you cannot vote. So people with IDD are allowed to have a person with them when they go to vote in person. It is important to note, though, that you cannot have a group home staff member vote for you. When you go to a polling site to vote, you can bring one person with you unless it requires more than one person for you to physically access the booth. And then just noting the group home and congregate setting. A congregate setting would be any staffed setting. That's a nursing home, alternative family living, or a group home. If you've got questions about guardianship and who can and can't help a person vote, it's important to go to the North Carolina General Statutes. You can pull those up online and go to Chapter 35A, and that will give you more information. And again, if you have questions, it's best to contact the North Carolina Board of Elections. So what if you're denied the right to vote on Election Day by a poll worker? If you're turned away at the polls when you go to vote, you can look at the poll worker and say, the law requires you to give me a provisional ballot with a receipt. And if they still deny you a ballot or access to vote, then again, you're going to want to contact the North Carolina Board of Elections, and you may want to contact Disability Rights North Carolina. So some of the things that you can do before you vote. Take some time before the election in November to learn about the candidates that are running for each office. Do their views and values align with your views and values? What are they doing to help people with intellectual and developmental disabilities? And what are the issues that are important to each candidate? You're going to want to visit each candidate's webpage to learn a little bit more about them. After the election, you can stay up to date on the issues affecting people with IDD. You can go to the ARC of the United States and learn what elected officials are doing for people with IDD. You can also reach out to our advocacy team at the ARC of North Carolina if you have questions about elected officials and what they're doing for folks with IDD. And you can also learn more about how you can become a self-advocate. So here are some resources. Again, if you have questions about voting and about elections, you can go to the ARC of the United States. They have a disability voter guide in English and Spanish. Disability Rights North Carolina has a resource called Access the Vote. And then there is the contact information and website for the North Carolina Board of Elections. Some of the things that we're doing at the ARC of North Carolina, we do have a webinar series that we've created about tailored plans, care management, several different issues that are affecting people with IDD. You can take a look at our Facebook page or our Twitter feed. We are posting flyers there with information about our webinars and how you can register. You can also read our blog. You can access our YouTube channel. You can view past webinars and videos that we've posted on our YouTube channel. You can also submit your questions about Medicaid transformation, and we're learning people have a lot of questions. So you can follow that link and submit any questions that you may have. I think that's the last slide. So thanks everybody for listening. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to meeting you again on our next webinar.